Miriam and Nain, an investigative journalist.
We're here asking people about the coronavirus.
Hi, everyone. This is Miriam and Nain. Welcome to another episode of Truth Lives Here. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Lynn, Corey Diggs of Corey Diggs Reports, and we're going to be doing a deep dive into these immense reports that she's put together. One is called Laundering with Immunity, the Control Framework Part 1, and then the other one is Space, the New Frontier for the Central Control Grid. I'm going to share the screen. Okay, we can start with the Central Control Grid. And before I just shut up to let Corey speak, I just want to say that as a real journalist, someone who actually cares about details, because that's where the devil is, to be so focused, it takes an immense amount of work. So I just want to give you props, Corey, because I know what it takes to create these. You go into a wormhole and it takes a lot of focus. Welcome.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here. And thank you. Yes, you do. You definitely know how much work it does take. It's like you said, the details, like in this particular report, I cite over 160 sources, so it's a lot of reading. Yes. And of articles and websites and white papers, goodness, the white papers, to put them together. But like you, I'm very anal about that, and I like to bring the receipts. So
yeah, and it's a beautiful resource for human beings. And just incredible amount of work to not only research, write, connect the dots, which is a very important component, to read so much, to be like, oh, that piece connects with that other article, and that means that. So I would love for you to take us through. I believe you can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So do you want to share about it's maybe obvious question of what prompted you to bring this report forth?
Yeah, so this one on Space, the New Frontier for the Central Control Grid, is I started seeing an awful lot of connections, and it made sense to me, especially after Edge and I, weeks back, were talking about the enormous amount of energy that would be required to run the financial digital currency, CBDC's ultimate control grid that they want to run. And so I start looking at this and I said, it's genius, especially after doing my Laundering with Immunity report, because these people have been operating outside the law since the 1940s.
Wow.
So why not take it to space where there's no jurisdiction and we have nothing but a complete farce of, agreements and volunteer guidelines that none of them abide by. And who's going to enforce surveillance, weaponry, a financial infrastructure, all the things that they're building? Nobody. So it's pretty brilliant. They are brilliant. You got to give them that.
Yeah. Wicked genius, I say.
What's that?
Wicked genius.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically what's going on is they're building, so everyone, I'm sure your listeners are very familiar with smart cities, 15-minute cities, using our smartphones as a weapon, getting us onto a QR code, a digital identity, in order to control our access to everything, have all of our data in one place, control what we can purchase, if we can drive, so on and so forth. And so in order to do that, they have to lock things into place, and they're a lot further along than I realized. And this is more than just about the control grid. I actually have a whole section in here bringing people up to speed on what's going on in the financial sector with the digital currency, crypto, CBDCs, because they've made great progress, especially over this past week. So I broke it down into sections based on, I started with space, and I break it down by the data. They're building space-based data centers up there. They've already run some tests on this. So, and when I say up there, I'm talking
Yeah.
low Earth orbit.
Okay.
So let me just preface
Yes.
all this with all the crap we're seeing about them saying, well, we're going to go to the moon again, allegedly, and we're going to go to Mars. And in 2026, we're doing a mission to Saturn, millions and millions of miles away. Just as soon as we figure out how to get out of low Earth orbit without burning up. And so the ISS and International Space Station, all the satellites, all the Starlinks you're seeing up there, all of this is low Earth orbit.
Okay.
So when I'm referring to what they're doing, this is all low Earth orbit, and through commercial companies, but also through Space Force. So they're building a power supply system, and we can get into this.
Okay.
Using lots of satellites. They've already run the blockchain. We're talking Bitcoin and Ethereum. JP Morgan's already tested this out. They have a whole demo on it. The surveillance and weaponry, space fence, space laws. I have a whole section on space laws. And then I get into the digital currency, financial infrastructure aspect of this.
Yeah.
And so it's quite
enormous.
something.
Yeah, it's wow.
Anyone who thinks that Elon Musk is their friend needs to think again.
Big time. Big time.
Yes, I'm very concerned about how many people have been duped, and I'm quite baffled by that.
There's so many fanboys, right? There's so many.
I know. I don't understand it. It's so transparent. It's and by actions, you know, and the double speak and the Neuralink, and I could go on and on with the whole list. But he's very, very involved in this. He's a front man, just like Gates, just like Bezos, Zuckerberg. They're front men, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And so SpaceX has been working with our government for quite a while. They're building a whole secondary satellite group of satellites called Starshield that basically, how do I explain? Okay, so Starlink, everyone's familiar with Starlink.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, how cool, he's providing internet to the world. Yeah, how cool, he's providing all the nodes that are going to lock into us. Isn't that great? So all the data that moves between them, they have laser beams. So they've created a mesh network. I mean, look at that. That's an actual
and this is
internet.
around the world. This is not just
Oh yeah, he's in multiple countries. He's all over the place. All over the place. There's more ground-based stations here in the US than everywhere else, but I believe eventually they're not even going to need those, because with the lasers going from Starlink to Starlink satellite, they've built a mesh network up there. And so the satellites themselves are powered by solar panels and lithium ion batteries, which in Starlinks, they last about 5 years, and then they allegedly, you know, go start to descend and then burn up, and now we have a little bit of debris, and that's where the space fence comes in a little bit later. Here, I'll tell you about the space fence. So these satellites can then piggyback the data over to the military satellites of Starshield. So just think about that, which of course will be, you know, much more encrypted and whatnot. And people need to understand these satellites and the GPS, and they work with their weapons systems. Okay, this isn't about the internet. I mean, it is about getting people plugged in.
But this is about a prison planet. Look at this.
Right.
It's like a prison planet.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So they're wanting to build like a military internet, the full data systems, because they say that it's less vibration, it's cooler temperatures, the energy's better to do these data systems out there, and then they can solar power them. So you've got, I don't have it, I'm just like rambling. So when you get to the solar based sections, space-based solar systems, you'll see all the countries already involved in this. And they started talking about this back in, I think it was the 60s or 70s in the US and Russia. And so multiple countries have been working on this for quite some time. and they have all their launch dates. I give the basic details and links so people can delve into those for their own countries separately.
Wow.
And they're doing this for two reasons. One, because if they have solar systems in space that can power satellites, space stations, whatever they need for a power source, they have 24/7 because you're obviously much closer to the sun.
Right.
The second reason is the climate hoax. They're saying, well, we need to be able to power beam all this energy we're going to get down to Earth, and we can power entire towns. So you'll have this picture, microwave, electromagnetic waves beaming down to some receiver device unit on the ground here on Earth and allegedly, powering an entire town. I don't know that they're actually going to carry that part out. They might, because it's a good way to hide money. I'm trying to imagine what's going to happen to birds and planes and everything else that
Right.
get, that fly through these paths. But I think it's more so because think of how much faster they can expedite the financial control grid if they were able to do this in space, as opposed to trying to generate that level of power here.
Yeah, imagine also how very few people could comprehend. I mean, this information that you're putting together, centralizing in one place. I mean, people don't understand what's going on in their own body, let alone in space, right? They don't have a comprehension of what's going on this planet, let alone, blockchain connecting with Starlink or, blockchain, like comment on blockchain for space governance. I mean, isn't that beyond most people's comprehension of what is that?
Yeah, so so they'll say that blockchain, the banks, Deloitte, BIS, central banks, they'll all tell you that blockchain is decentralized and therefore it makes it safe and secure. And I'm not a crypto expert, I'm not a blockchain expert, but there are that's like a whole area, right? And they say, some blockchain experts can say, well, we can decentralize it. Well, okay, until it's co-opted, until the cryptos are regulated, until they're completely demolished. It's how this system will ever be decentralized with these forces controlling it is beyond me. If there's someone who can pull that off and battle against these guys, to build a financial system that actually is decentralized for us, bring it on. So like Bitcoin and Ethereum,
Yeah,
they've already tested on the International Space Station of running transactions through the satellite, and NASA, so let me just read you this so to get perspective, because you have space chains. Space chain's a really big player in this as well. And so NASA does these daily summaries on what's going on, like status reports, updates on what's going on the ISS. So last year they say NanoRacks, which is another company I talk about in here. NanoRacks module 83 was installed into NanoRacks mainframe alpha. I know some of this is a little technical. Module 83 is a simple plug and play tech demo to test the usability of Space Chain's multi-signature security system, as well as reliability of GOM space boards within the ISS environment. Space Chain 2.0 validates the hardware and software needed for blockchain transactions between hardware on the ground and the space station. Relaying transactions to the space station protects them from physical attack, while multi-signature technology and secure satellite transmission provide more security from cyber attacks. The investigation also actively explores what types or space payloads could use blockchain.
wow.
There's a massive amount of money going into this. Morgan Stanley space team estimated that this 350 billion global space industry right now is going to reach over $1 trillion by 2040. And I'm telling you, I think it's going to be a lot higher than that, just based on what I've been researching. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
So So just envision, okay, so like the satellites, it's really hard to describe all this in a nutshell. So you've got you've got your satellites, right? They're moving our data, they're sharing it with the military data, they're locking it down. You've got this space fence, which I'll get into, that allegedly surveils all the debris and satellites and everything happening in space because they have the world's greatest radar system that was built by Lockheed Martin. And they're located out in the Marshall Islands, but there's a lot of defense contractors and other commercial companies that are building different tracking systems as well. And Space Force just recently, in the last week, I believe, said, we're putting together a strategy and guidelines for commercial companies to work with the military in peacetime and wartime. So, and they've moved, and I'll share this later, they've moved a lot of responsibility under Space Force. I'll just say it now so I don't forget.
Yeah.
So they've moved, just in August last year, all SATCOMs were pulled from the Army and moved under Space Force. And they also moved 200 civilians and 300 people from the Army over to Space Force. So for the first time ever, they're controlling all comms, satellite comms, under one roof.
Wow.
Then just last week, I think it was on October 1st,
Yeah.
1st or 2nd, they said we're moving the oh gosh, it's JTAGs, it's joints. Hang on, I gotta look, I can't remember the exact name. It's the Army's Joint Tactical Ground Station Missile Warning System. Okay, so they officially transferred that over to Space Force as well. And that's the process of satellite data, and they disseminate ballistic missile warnings. So all of this is moved under Space Force. And
what does it present? Like, what's it sold as? Like more safety for humans?
oh
Like,
yeah, more safety. Everything's about safety. Everything's about equity, getting everyone online. The power source, the solar, you know, that's going to be about the climate and how we're going to be able to keep things to net zero, because we're not going to bring, it's just, you know, this is going to be a whole new power source industry, while also being able to power all of our satellites and space stations. So they want to decommission the ISS by 2030, and they want to build 4 commercial space stations, which includes, I'm not going to remember them all, but it's like Lockheed Martin, you have Bezos, is it Blue Origin?
is it in? I'm sure you're listed in.
And yeah, it's in here. It's in the 40 pages somewhere. And then you've got Branson's in there, and we're talking billions of dollars here. So yeah, there you go. Blue Origin, Sierra Nevada, NanoRacks, who I talked about earlier, Voyager Space. So that's their game. But what they're doing is they're glamorizing everything right now. They're Hollywooding this up. They're saying, oh, look at Elon, look at the rockets, look at the satellites. Isn't this wonderful? We're going to do a space elevator. We're going to fly people to the moon, and we're going to colonize Mars. We're going to be vacationing in space. It's going to be great. That is the biggest eye candy distraction for people, because they don't want you to see what they're really building up there.
I'm just looking at this graphic.
Yeah. Space fence. So are you familiar with Elena Freeland?
I am, meaning I know that she's written extensively about transhumanism
And space and what's going on with space fence and nanotech and the weapons and whatnot. So I talked with her, and I actually included some of our conversation in this report as well.
That's awesome.
Because she certainly knows far more than I do on this subject. And
it's a complete different world, you know.
It is, and that's why it took me so much longer with this one, is because I had to school myself on a lot, you know. Like, I can see the players, I can see the money, I can see what they're doing, but it's still some areas of this I wasn't terribly familiar with, so I had to do a lot of reading.
Right. So let's say there's a collision warning. What would that be if a satellite is going to what is a collision warning? What's colliding with what?
But I don't know. I don't know on that front. I didn't start diving into every little
Yeah.
aspect of that, because so here's the thing. They have this is like the world's strongest radar system, supposedly, right? So the surveillance, they've upgraded this to the point where so they just launched this in 2020. This is actually this is the upgraded version that was removed from, after being under control of the Navy for 40 years. It too moved to Space Force. And so they now can see like something the size of a marble,
I bet.
at a great distance. And so you think about what's going on, right? And so the way Elena explains it is, we've been breathing in, and I'm sure you're aware of this, you could probably say a whole lot on this, we've been breathing in nanotechnology for like 25 years.
Yeah.
And the nodes, whereas we do have the cell phones, and we'll have like the QR codes, which the banks are driving, QR codes and biometrics, and I have some stats on that too. In addition to that, though, the nodes that are going to hook us in could potentially be the nanotech that is in our bodies. So
let me just say, like the nano, I think that they're nano forming the planet, because they're cloud seeding, it's in our bodies, it's in our lettuce, it's in our soil, and you have to wonder, to what end, what's with all this nanotech? I don't think it's been, just to say, turned on, for lack of a better way, or activated.
right. I think there's some serious hacking going on into our bodies. I think this all plays a role in the transhumanism agenda, and it's rather daunting, isn't it?
Yeah, so sorry, you were gonna say how she explained it. You were talking about the nanotech, or the point of the nanotech, maybe.
Right. It just that we would be like, she said, think of, Elon's Neuralink, right? And it's like we would all be linked into these nodes through Space Fence. And I have a bunch of information in here. I found some other documents that, for when people start thinking this is this type of stuff, and weather war is really not happening, which, by the way, she says that they intentionally, with the spraying and what they're doing up there, they intentionally need to keep it dry, because the moisture interferes with the signals.
Oh, interesting.
Which makes sense when you think about all the manufactured droughts going on, and the draining of lakes and everything happening. But what was I just gonna point out? Totally lost my train of thought where I was going there. Oh, the weather warfare. I mean, I have a document in here through the Air Force about them talking about being able to controlling the weather is so significant, that as significant as the atom bomb would be, and that they believe they could control it by 2025, like completely control it. And we already know what's been going on for years now. So so I have that linked in here. There's a lot of different weaponry. People are familiar with DEWs. We already know with the chemtrails and the spraying, and I mean, and NASA doesn't hide that. So, but I'm more concerned with the way they're building out this control system. So whereas you look at the cities and you go, well, if we have smart cities, and then you kind of see it as each smart city is individually controlled, but it's not. It's like we're all going into this mainframe, right? This main infrastructure that's like this umbrella over our heads. And then you've got the financial sector that is moving at rapid pace with the digital currency. So let me just bring you up to speed on that real quick.
Yeah.
so you've got, and forgive me, I'm just going by memory from all of this. I just published this yesterday. So you've got the FedNow, I'm sure you've heard of in the US. FedNow rolled out through the Federal Reserve, which acts as a gateway in your bank account. They're in over 35 banks piloting it, and they're probably in more than that by now. And it's to move money through in a faster manner, right?
Right.
So in the past several years, the World Bank started working on this project called Fast Payment Systems. And of course, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is nothing but a CIA front, has been, has funded this more than $9 million. So what it is they're already in over 60 countries. It's a fast payment system. It is what it states. So that means real time. That means kind of like PayPal, right? Or Venmo, you go to send someone money and it's instantaneous for the payer and the payee. So they've been making sure that countries are building out this fast payment system so everything can be in real time. While at the same time this year in March rolled out the new ISO messaging standards. So when these transactions happen and the messaging standards to attach that information that gets sent through back and forth during these transactions now has the ability to increase the amount of data that gets transferred with those transactions. So that banks all over have been implementing that, and this is global.
Yeah.
So now you got more data attached to it. So then you have BIS, Bank for International Settlements, who has been working on the CBDCs, on the cross-border payments. And so they just finished completing a wholesale CBDC. And prior to that, they ran other tests. And I can't remember, I think it was like France and Singapore, and I forget the third one, where they ran these cross-border through this gateway called Nexus that they developed. And what they're saying is they can piggyback. So the fast payment systems are in place, say, on a country level. And now we want to do cross-border payments. So now you just link in to the cross-border gateway called Nexus, and we can move that money in real time. And when we get the green light for CBDCs, it's a go. So let me just read you something. Let me find my notes here, because this is really important to note that this this was from 2022 Bank for International Settlements report. They said, it needs to be, this pertains to CBDCs. It needs to be noted that many of these features can, in isolation, be offered by other payment innovations, and many gaps could be addressed through regulation and sound oversight arrangements. CBDCs may not be necessary because, they quote, combining different payments innovations such as open application programming interfaces, APIs, fast payment services, contactless chips, and QR codes could achieve many of these same goals. They go on to state this is particularly true when accompanied by robust regulatory and oversight arrangements that public authorities can use to catalyze private sector players, enforce sound governance arrangements, and foster required coordination and collaboration. You love all those buzzwords. So essentially what they're saying is we don't need the CBDCs to lock this in right now. We're good to go. And when we get the green light for those, though, we can just piggyback it into the systems we've already built. So they're pretty far along with this. And then as far as crypto goes, you've already got some crypto companies that have brought it up to speed with ISO standards. So they're like playing right into this game. And what's going to happen there, let me find my notes because I can't memorize all this. Where do I have that? Oh, here it is. Okay. So they're explaining that the fast payment systems reported by the World Bank, they talked about crypto assets, stating that crypto assets appear to be on the rise globally, including some that certain individuals and firms consider to be a medium of exchange. If these crypto assets with payment capabilities gain more mainstream acceptance, a question will arise as to whether or how they shall or could become interoperable with existing payment systems, including fast payment arrangements. Well, they've already done it. They've already done it with PayPal and Venmo, and what is the third one? There's a third one in there.
Yeah, what is
It's in the report, but
Okay.
there's a third one in there. So they're setting it up. So the point is, the digital wallet companies,
Yeah.
everyone's fighting for a piece of the pie. And so if the cryptos will eventually be regulated, right? And there's just, it's going to be, it's all going to end up being centralized. I just don't see a way around it. But
So I have a question.
yeah,
So I think two things. One, I just imagine in the future, like just every step, everything is tracked and traced, and just I'm in South Beach, and on the boardwalk by the ocean, literally every 50 feet is a camera, right? And nobody really pays attention. And in reality, these cameras are everywhere in Florida. Florida is a very prominent police state, despite the appearances of freedom. One, two, what I think of is, so let's say I would imagine you are too. I'm allergic to, if someone flashes me, just scan this QR code. I'm like, I don't do QR codes. I don't want to scan anything. And people are scanning them without even realizing. I asked like for my mother's lot number for her vaccine, and she's like, Mary, they sent me a QR code. And I was like, what? So what else I want to say? So if let's say I'm banned on PayPal, Venmo, GoFundMe, whatever. So once we centralize and we're in the system, you know, people have to tie in the social credit score and how they're going to control. You've been a bad boy, you've been a bad girl. Can you speak on that? Just the
on how that's all going to work.
Yeah, like how do you, let's paint a scenario, you know, I don't know, 10 years from now, and people like you and me, I mean, that don't want to get plugged into the system, and you know, you're more adamant about that than I am. How do we, are we going to go to the savage lands like in Brave New World? What happens?
I think they'll see us from all their satellites if we try going too far off grid, you know, and they could beam us up. So here's the thing. As far as phone, so I want to tell you some important stats here on this, just to give perspective. But with phones, you know, and I've been one who's been saying for a long time, ditch your smartphones. But here's the reality.
Yeah.
They are using them as weapons, more for just a QR code and financial. I believe, you know, frequency issues, radiation issues, all of it.
Right.
So I do think that would be wise. However, unless millions of people do that, at some point, your bank, because everything's moving through digital currency, which I believe in the future we won't even have brick and mortar banks, is going to tell you, if you want to transact, you need to use your smartphone. You have to have the QR code. You have to do the biometrics. And so how are you going to transact? I don't know. I that is where this is heading. So for example, the fast payment systems has a whole council. Dude, they have a podcast called like Off the Rails or something. It's crazy. So you can follow along and listen to their updates every week if you want. I have it linked in my report. They created a whole program around QR codes about getting this hardcore implemented. And I brought this up in my book on the global landscape on vaccine ID passports, because Deloitte, who is a company that's very involved in all of this and prepares a ton of white papers for the WEF, has said for a long time they're going to use the banks to push this. And so they even state that in China, the QR code payments reached 1.3 trillion, that's US, just in the fourth quarter of 2019. So your scan to pay QR codes, that, you know, they're moving this hardcore. That's what they want here. So then Deloitte has a statistic they state on biometrics, and they say in just a few short years, and this was their most recent one. So I believe this was from a 2023 report. In just a few short years, 3 billion global consumers are expected to make 5.1 trillion of purchases using biometric payments. So they're rolling this out big time.
Yes. Yes. And they are banking for the future generations. I mean, this is an incubation period, meaning like we, you, me, others that are reporting on this, we see the trajectory. We're looking into the future. Like I say, I'm trying to stay in the present, understand the past, and gauge what's happening in the future.
Right.
It's a lot. And so people can't wrap their heads around, and that's why these reports, I think, are vital to educate people.
Here's an example to your question you had before.
Yeah.
So, and I put this little diagram in a book. I was looking at what different states were doing as far as the whole tokenization and blockchain and how they were going to try and utilize that through like welfare or what are some of the programs they have, for food, SNAP or I can't even remember them all right now.
Food.
Yeah. And then of course, this will go through taxes coming right out of your account and everything, but then at the grocery store too. So I wanted to see, and I found this one that Illinois had done on how this would work. And it's a great little diagram because it shows the consumer going to the grocery store and everything is considered smart contracts. With all these transactions, even the stuff going on in space, they all refer to it as smart contracts. So you go into the store and you go to buy something and they show it moving through the smart contract, and then someone's trying to buy a cheeseburger and it's totally denied and gets moved outside the cart and they are not allowed to buy it.
Wow.
And so there's, this is why they want electric vehicles also, because they have more control over it. They would like to have no vehicles and just have you walking or biking on a sidewalk. So
and they're also redoing the entire power grid. Bill Gates has said he's redoing the entire power grid.
Yeah. So I gotta believe that your listeners are already familiar with how this would work, but essentially they want all your data in one place. It's like when you go to a school and you say, well, I need my transcripts, I need my information, I gotta transfer over to the school. Or you go to a new health group and you say, well, I need to get all my records over from this health group, and every single doctor you saw, it was all aggregated into one location. They want it all in one location. They want everything about you, your contacts, where you've lived, where you work, what money you make. They want it all, what jabs you've taken. They want it all in one location. And by doing that, that builds a social credit score, which I have in my book that Deloitte had in a white paper where they already said they were going to be shifting. So your typical credit unions, the three main credit unions, Trans, Equifax, I forget the other one. They base it on payment. They've always based it on payments, if you're on time, delinquent, yada, yada. Yeah. And now they want to start rolling in, other factors into that. Well, that is the social credit system we're talking about. So if you don't get your jab, or if you don't follow along with the climate hoax, or if they think you went against the narrative or were a bad boy, then your score is going to lower, then you can't get a loan. Or so that's how it would work. It's like putting together a whole new system. Yeah. And like JP Morgan says, so they were the world's first bank-led tokenized, everything will become a token. Everything, you, me, our car, the French fries we're eating, everything will be tokenized. So they were the first one to have a bank-led tokenized value transfer in space. Okay, they've tested this out now. And I have the demo link on my site, and they executed this via smart contracts on a blockchain network established between satellites orbiting the Earth. Yeah. And the announcement states that space exploration is becoming increasingly well-funded and presents an exciting opportunity to deploy financial technology to create a brand new payments infrastructure leveraging blockchain. So it's happening.
Yeah, and people are just going along with, I want to say a couple of things. I remember Zach being on with Zach Payne, and they're
Mhm.
talking about AI, and Zach was like, well, this is going to happen whether we like it or not. So if you can't beat them, join them. And I was just like, I don't know, that moment was like, fuck, that's, you know, I'm not going to have that attitude. I don't have that attitude, but I understand people will just go along to get along. It's just like when I tell people that causes cancer, and the response is everything causes cancer. Oh, okay then. All right, spread those fumes. But this regard, like, you know, my mom showing me her effing QR code to figure out the lot and not even realizing, right? Because it looks so
Right.
innocent, just scam.
Right.
It's kind of fun. But what is it propelling in the future? And I'm gonna dare to say, you and I are in the minority, and there's
No, we
different
are.
degrees, right? Of like, no, I'm not gonna do this, or and be sticking to your guns of not integrating, for lack of a better word.
A good word.
Yeah, but it's not a holistic integration. I wanted to ask a couple things. One, what did you think there was going to be anything nefarious on the 4th for the emergency broadcast? I kind of like didn't pay attention to it. Do you think that they did anything? It was a dud, that they'll do it on the 11th?
So I saw that announcement come out the day it came out before I even saw anything on social media.
Okay.
And I immediately thought, oh, you're going to have this whole group of people going, this is it. We're going to get the message.
Right.
The white hats are moving in, da 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 da. And I'm like, hell no, I'm turning my phone off. So I actually told my family, you know, everybody to turn their phones off because I just don't trust them. And you know what? If nothing happened, great. But they have the capabilities to do so many things that we can't see with the naked eye through frequencies and pulsing and
Yeah.
altering minds, behaviors, creating sickness. The abilities are staggering. And I've gotten it in several reports. I'm sure you've reported on it too. So I don't trust them where we're at right now. We're in the middle of World War III and the biggest spiritual battle of our life. So if turning the phone off for an hour that we shouldn't really have in the first place anyways, it's no, you know, no big deal. So whether or not something did happen or not, I don't know. I don't know, because who knows? A frequency could pulse something and we may not see the outcomes of that until later. Or it could have been absolutely nothing and it was all propelled as scare tactic, because fear is a powerful weapon.
Absolutely. The last 3.5 years show us. Can we shift gears and talk about the ID? I'm going to share my screen again. 'Cause I definitely want to.
And talk about the witch. You said ID.
Your other report, your laundering.
Oh, the
with
laundering
immunity,
with
the
immunity.
control frame.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again just to show another magnificent report. And this is part 1, because, you know, you start writing, you're like, oh, this is going to be
So
40
I
pages
actually-
of anthrax. Like,
I actually have part 1 and part 2 on there already.
okay, great.
And I'm working on part 3, but I kind of sidetracked to get this other report done. So laundering with immunity is about the control framework. People have been wondering for a long time, like, why aren't these criminals being held accountable?
Right.
How are they getting away with murder? I mean,
Right.
literal murder.
Literal.
And
yeah.
everyone, I think, now is pretty familiar with the fact that, you know, Big Pharma doesn't hold liability. So now if you can take that and expand it and understand that there are actually 76 international organizations that also have no liability, but much.
And it's all laundering money?
Much, well, some of it, no. So, I mean, laundering money, but to use it, to weaponize it against us for these agendas they're rolling out. So you've got, of the 76 organizations, a good chunk of them, it's either 20 or 22 are arms of the UN.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll come as no shock. Then you have the Organization of American States, which most people don't know anything about. And that is primarily.
Are we looking at this triangle? Sorry, is this on this triangle? Can you see?
Yeah, that's on there.
Okay.
It's, yeah. So you have the Organization of American States, which most people don't know anything about, but my whole part 2 is pretty much designated towards that. And
Okay.
they were born long before the UN. They go back to 1890, and they handle the Western Hemisphere. So those who have heard of PAHO, Pan American Health Organization, PAHO is to the OAS as WHO is to the UN, and they all work together. So the Organization of American States has flown under the radar for a very long time. And let me tell you, they are the Americas and Canada and Mexico. So very important to keep your eyes on what these folks are up to.
Yeah.
So in looking at your chart, what we have is we have BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, at the top. And I'll tell you about the immunities in a minute.
Yeah.
And then underneath them, we've got, you know, all the central banks, 63 central banks, Federal Reserve, World Bank Group, the insurers and payment systems to the that fall under BIS. Then underneath them, we've got your 76 international organizations, which and then in addition to that, you've got Big Pharma, CERN, and Gavi, because they all hold immunities. And then
Yeah.
underneath that, and this is a really key part to this, is you have thousands of NGOs and corporations that are working with and through them. So in many cases, there's NDAs, and I've gone through and I show some in part 2 of the agreements they have. So they have the ability, they have the authority to extend their immunities to organizations they're working with. So that puts a whole spotlight on all your corrupt NGOs, like Clinton's, for example. And then underneath that, you've got citizens that are paying into this systemically corrupt system,
Yeah.
and state legislators that need to, you know, enforce the Constitution, and there'll be a lot of argument over that whole part. And so back in 1945, what they did is they said, well, due to World War II, you know, we need to create the UN, we need to bring everyone together. And while we do this, we also need them to have immunities comparable to diplomatic immunities, so that it's a lot easier to move around and get things done. They don't need the interference and distraction and yada, yada. So these immunities, and this is the nutshell version,
Yeah.
because there's layers to it. And just so people understand, you've got the International Organization Immunities Act, which was passed here in December in the US. But this act is replicated across the globe in most countries. So it gives them these immunities and privileges and tax exemptions, basically to completely operate outside the law.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, the UN and the OAS have treaties and headquarters agreements and additional layers of protections. I mean, not even the military can go inside these headquarters. And by the way, the OAS is like a block away from the White House. They're right there.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Well, I remember speaking to you when I was
Yeah,
looking
yeah, that's right. You
Right.
were looking into something else, and I said, "Oh, yeah, look
School
here."
of the Americas and School of Assassins, and then I stumbled upon.
Yeah.
So I
So,
want to take a step back and ask you questions, because like when I see, I mean, I knew CERN has immunities, but who grants? Like, how do they get inducted? And then to see, I didn't know Gavi had immunity.
oh yeah, Gavi's a special one. They were, you know, it was the WHO, the UN, very involved with Gavi and the Global Fund. I cover them in this section down below. They actually had protections through them first, and then they were given protections through the International Organizations Immunities Act through the US. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, I didn't even know about this act. So
Yeah, most people don't. And so what it did is basically Congress said, we're going to give presidents the authority to issue an executive order designating an international organization with these immunities and privileges. And so every president, and I have every single immunity documented in executive order in this report,
Beautiful.
every president all the way up until Trump has given these out to various organizations. And the first ones, of course, were the UN and OAS out the gate. So Truman gave the majority of, big chunk out right out the gate. And then they all piled on. I have a very interesting report coming up on part 3 of this. So let me just tell you what these immunities are so people understand what I'm talking about when I'm saying immunities and privileges, like how protected these organizations are.
Very.
So I bullet pointed the key ones, and I have the links, of course, to the full act that everyone can read. So international organizations, their property and their assets, wherever located and by whomsoever held, shall enjoy the same immunity from suit in every form of judicial process as is enjoyed by foreign governments, unless the organization waives their immunity.
How
And
special.
I've never seen
How
an
special.
organization waive their immunity. Immunity from, so they all self-audit, right? Their bank accounts, their documents are inviolable. They all do their own audits. They're all tax exempt.
Disgusting.
So yeah, their immunity from search and seizure of property and assets wherever located and by whomsoever held. Archives are inviolable. They're exempt from property taxes, internal revenue, communication taxes, taxes on transportation of persons or properties, customs duties, admission of officers and employees and their family members without checks from customs. Just imagine that from a security standpoint. Officers and employees are exempt from legal suits or any other legal action in regards to activities related to work. So, this is why they're all so goddamn smug. They can maneuver and they're just untouchable.
Yeah, and they know in the back of their minds that they're protected by this, but people on the forefront, like, oh, why isn't this person getting justice? What are we gonna do?
Right. Right.
Before you go on, Corey, I want to say, like, yesterday, Mark Renon of Genesis Church, chlorine dioxide got finally sentenced, found guilty, sentenced 5 years. His sons got sentenced to 12 years. And, it's like speaking to a friend, who can we go to? And I don't know if you've listened to Dr. Shiva talk about the not so obvious establishment, but it's just like, if we look back at the Holocaust and we say, or people say, well, why didn't people stand up? It's like, just like here, we tried to stand up and look, like my livelihood has been attacked. So, what is the solution when these people get carte blanche and immunity to do all these things that you've outlined, but then God-loving citizens get thrown in jail for nothing? It's disgusting.
Yeah, it is. It's disgusting. And I don't know. We can go over solutions at the end. But that's just awful. It's awful what we're seeing happening. Just complete lawlessness.
Yeah. Yes.
So let me just finish
please,
these last few points. So the employees, this is kind of a narrow one, but employees are exempt from income tax if they are not U.S. citizens or both a U.S. citizen and a citizen of the Commonwealth of the Philippines.
Interesting.
Officers and employees of the international organization and members of their immediate families other than nationals of the United States require no alien registration or fingerprinting or registration of foreign assets. I know. So if the Secretary of State determines that the continued presence of a person from an international organization in the U.S. is no longer desirable, or if the Secretary of State wishes to withdraw the privileges, exemptions, and immunities of the international organization itself, they have the power to do so. No Secretary of State is going to do this. And I have been dropping this report under congressmen, and saying, hey, since Congress is the one who put this in place in 1945, can we shut this shit down? Can't Congress do something to vote and shut this down at this point? It's completely completely just lawless what they're doing. And it's, and if you look at the list of the 76 organizations, you will see that it is basically makes up the future of every industry, like from fishing to weather to water to food to farming to postal, to space, to like, it makes up all of it. Environmental, of course.
Who
You
sits
even
on
have
this
some banks
board?
in there. What's
Who
that?
sits on this board to be like, Inter-American Defense Board, you got immunity? Like who,
The presidents, the Congress gave
okay.
presidents the authority by executive order to designate them.
And has it been amended at all since 1945? Has there been any brush ups?
Not that I've seen. Nope. And I mean, I went through a ton of documents. I even asked Edge to help verify everything to double check me.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot, because then you've got the UN treaties on top of this, and then you've got the treaties, you know, with the OAS, and then you have all these headquarters agreements. And so
The
I read
International
through,
Coffee Organization,
yeah.
Inter-American Tropical Tuna Commission. What the hell do they do at the Tuna Commission? Seriously, what are they doing over there?
I
They
don't
haven't.
know. I don't know. There's some good ones in here. So all your main
Wow.
corrupt ones that you see involved in the last years over COVID, you know, they're all protected. So when you've got the WHO teaming up with Gavi and Global Fund and PayHo, or any of these organizations all teaming up to you know, help the world and their health, they all have immunity. They cannot be held accountable for anything. And so why not go, you know, this has worked out really well for us. Let's take this ship out to outer space where there's absolutely no jurisdiction, because everyone's catching on down there. And now we're up here where everything can be protected and we can control it from space, and who's going to come after us. And my concern is, what happens when we, you know, are moved into this digital currency system, and one day all of a sudden your bank account's empty?
Right.
What recourse will you have?
Nothing.
Yeah,
Nothing.
yeah.
Nothing. There's no
So
one. I mean, there's no one to go to, and it's. Uh, have you ever heard any politician, any activist, anyone speak about this immunity?
no, in
1945?
in fact, the only one I spoke with that was aware of it to this level, like, so a lot of people knew that Gavi had some immunities, or they knew that the UN had some kind of protections, but they weren't aware
It's
of
huge.
this act or all these organizations.
It's huge.
This Alex Newman was aware that the UN had these extensive ones. Alex is great.
Yeah.
And of course, Catherine Austin Fitz was working on the BIS and the central banks end of it. And so I referenced their reporting on that part of it, because I was talking with her about it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to hit up the organizations while you're focusing on the banks, because I want to see this whole web, you know, because they're all working together ultimately.
Wow. The
It's pretty crazy.
International Food Policy Research Institute. I don't know what limited privileges, like, oh, you can only
Well,
murder.
I don't know, but then we've got FAHO in here too, which of course, that is where all decisions come from. And I have a report on that, which is, they created Codex.
Yeah.
Was it FAHO and the WHO, I believe, back in,
Yes.
I don't even want to say a
Yes.
date because I won't get it right. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so I interviewed Scott Tips on that and did a report on
Yeah.
Codex.
I was just writing his name down because I have to email him after this, because
Oh yeah,
doing some research for him regarding FAHO and
nice.
yeah, Scott
Yeah,
is awesome.
yeah, yeah. He is a fighter. So all of the food decisions, everything you put in your mouth, it all stems from there. And then it comes over here, and the, you know, we're all involved in it. All the countries are involved in it, and they say, oh, this is our guidance. And then lo and behold, next thing you know, the FDA and the USDA are all following suit, and we're going to eat bugs, or we're going to have lab grown meat, and we're going to approve this. Why? Because all the guys over it Codex decided this is a good idea.
Let's talk
So
about Gavi for a moment, can we? Why this is
sure.
special?
Gosh, I can't even remember what the exact specific details of how that went down there. I don't know if you want to read a couple sentences.
Yeah, sure. Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, founded in 2000 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with UNICEF, the World Bank Group, and WHO, listed as partners, was originally hosted by the United Nations Children's Fund, aka UNICEF, meaning it was granted immunities and privileges through this hosting relationship. When UNICEF no longer hosted Gavi, it became a foundation and an international institution under Swiss law and was given privileges and immunities in Switzerland on January 1st, 2009, that equate to those the UN enjoys. In fact, Gavi was the first international institution to receive recognition under the new Host Act in Switzerland. Should I continue? Do you want to say anything about the specialness of Switzerland?
You know,
There's peace in Switzerland. That's what my mom will say.
It's quite the nest over there, I tell
Yeah.
you. It's fun looking at all of that on satellite and seeing where everyone, mapping out where everyone is over there. But what's interesting is what they did, and see, so many people will say Bill Gates Gavi or Bill Gates Global Fund, and I'm like, no. There are other founders to this, and that part's very important because this is how they snaked their way into these immunities.
Yeah.
And then, later received them from the US, of course.
Who was his right-hand man at Gavi? I don't know if he's still there.
The one who was always speaking,
Yeah,
like the main director guy, I can't remember his name.
looks like a rat.
Gosh, I can't remember his name. But they were very, so what do I have here? Let's see. So I'm looking at your screen. In 2019, oh yeah. With the 1 billion, the COVAX, remember when COVAX
Yeah.
rapid financing facility was created in order to push more jobs? Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, and so these people just keep creating more and more little LLCs or foundations or organizations, and they just keep rolling them out. None of these people pay taxes on anything, and they have all these protections. So of course they're going to do whatever they want to do, and they're not going to come across as scared, and they're going to come across as smug and laughing when they're, because they have nothing to fear.
I'm looking at his name. I don't know. Sorry.
Now it's bugging her.
Yeah. Seth, is it Seth Berkeley? Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the name.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
Berkeley is. Okay, I'm just going down. We know Big Pharma.
Yeah.
CERN.
Yeah, CERN.
Also in Switzerland.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you, Corey. This is monumentous. This is so valuable. And it's a big piece to say, like, oh yeah, all these people know they're immune. They're under the act.
Right.
No shit that you're never gonna see any peace. You're never gonna see. And like you said, people don't realize, like, Bill Gates is just the front man. People they're talking about Fauci. It's like, it's just a front man.
Right. They need to have the focus on a person.
Yeah.
So hey, you're going to live out a life. We're going to give you billions of dollars. You're going to fly and jet all over the world. You're going to be 100% safe no matter what you do. And
we're going to put all 5'5" of them on the cover of Vanity Fair. Well,
yeah, and we just need you to be the face, and we need you to take some heat, and but know that you're 100% protected. Of course, I also think they're totally dispensable. I think most of them are.
Yeah.
I think that these strings are being done. We've got the central banks and BIF, and we can go back to the Nazis, and I think there are those that remain behind the curtains that are not of this world, man. I mean, they're powerful, masterful, genius, to be able to pull this off for as long as they have, erasing history as they go,
Right? Big
creating the
point.
level of cognitive dissonance that's been created. And here we are trying to unravel it all. It's just a monster. And so I think the number one solution is everyone needs to raise their consciousness, because boy, they're coming for every part of our spiritual being, of our biofield, of
Yeah, I want to talk about that for a second. I want to talk about raising our consciousness, and how do you raise your consciousness, Corey, when you're delving into this dark stuff? Because I know for me, it has an impact. I mean, I am of the light, and I'm a light being, but I would be lying as an empath if I didn't tell you that I feel deep, and there's a sadness there, and I can't look it away or pretend that I'm not living in this construct.
right. Yeah, it is. It can be very daunting. There's been times where I've worked on various reports where I literally would cry while I was writing the report. And, the child trafficking and the organ harvesting ones, those were tough ones to work on. Some I would have to start like shifting away from and cover different agendas. It's a balancing act. And then I would, and then behind the scenes, I'd be saying to my friends, what the hell am I doing? Like, I've always been, an energy worker, and stay away from darkness, and don't want anything to do with politics. But I've been guided for a very long time and shown that this is stuff that I need to expose.
You're a
And so,
scribe for the future. They don't, I finished my book after 3 years on George Floyd, and it's like the Heath Ledger effect. It's like, oh my God, this is really dark, and I need some time to recuperate.
yeah, it is. It's heavy stuff. And it's interesting because at least for me, when I read something that someone else wrote, I feel it, I get it, I take it in. But when you're researching it and connecting it, and you're getting these intuitive hits, and you're finding it yourself, it's jaw-dropping,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
a different vibe altogether.
I'm sure
And
you've been in the moment where like, oh my God, did I just find this? Is this what I really think this is? Oh my
oh
goodness.
yeah, yeah. Or like I wake up and I have this whole vision and epiphany of how something all connects, and then I jump on my computer and I start going, okay, if this is true, then I know it's going to be these people. This is where the money's going to come from. This is the location, and I just hit it, and oh my God, it all lines up. And then I just sit there going, oh man, what? I didn't want to do another massive report, but now I'm going to have to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I don't think there's a full understanding of what real research is and real journalism. It's not like I did a Google search. No, that's not what's happening here. It's really, like you said, you're reading white papers, and it's very time consuming, and you have to have your eye on the ball. And also I would assume that you're like me in the sense, like, I genuinely want to understand, and I really, that's what drives me. Is like, I really would just want to know the truth.
Oh yeah, the insatiable curiosity.
Yeah. And to mix that with, a sense of the spiritual. Anyway, so we were talking about solutions, raising your consciousness.
Well, because
Yeah.
I think so I refer to it as like the dampening, right? I think for a long time they've been trying to suppress people's innate God-given senses and powers, and ability to actually manifest our own reality, and to make it seem like all of that is foo-foo stuff, right? Or it's new agey stuff. They don't want people to understand that your thoughts can manifest, that you're giving your fear away and being tied into this hamster wheel that they want you hooked into. Is like a freaking umbilical cord, and we're their batteries. And we need to
sucking on the leash.
we need to just like cut that cord. And it's one thing to recognize it and observe it and acknowledge it and like let other people know. It's another thing to be completely sucked into it and be in fear and be spend a week talking about what Fetterman's wearing, or, you know, who cares? They're goading the hell out of you. This is how they do this. This is how they suck all your energy, so that you don't realize that the energy you have, that your field is all powerful and all knowing, and we have the ability to tap into all this knowledge. And so I think it's really important that people that know what we're talking about stay focused on that path, and people that don't need to start kind of exploring that, because this is a spiritual battle. And by us giving them so much energy, like, so example, these reports, this is not to say they are all powerful. This is to say, look at what these shits have done.
Yeah.
And I'm not, you know, I do think we are going into a digital currency state. The whole financial structure is changing. You know, that happens in evolution throughout centuries. I don't think they're going to win every battle. I think that there are some things that we can fight against. I think that not complying with a ton of these things, we've seen the shifts multiple times where they've shut things down. They've had to back off from things because too many people spoke out about something or refused to do something. We've seen this time and time again. And so I think it's important to not throw in the towel and to stay focused on that. To, you know, when your bank says, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're going to have to scan your iris now. Now we're moving to biometrics. And you say, hell no. You know, right now when I go into my bank, they say, well, I'm making a deposit, right? And they'll say, well, do you have your phone on you so we can do validation? I'm like, I'm standing right here. You can see, here's my debit card from your bank. You can see that, you know, I've banked here for X amount of time. It's absurd. So I won't play the game. I just tell them, no, I will not play the game. And so there's, you know, certain things we can do. If we don't make something trendy and we don't make it go viral, it can't come to fruition. It's like the example of the QR codes. I've been saying forever, don't scan the QR code to get your free coffee or your 10th free cup or whatever. They started as a marketing ploy to bring people into the financial flip over, right? So in fact, the fast payment system council that was created on this whole QR code push, who do they have chairing it? The dude from Walmart. Why? Because Walmart has been pushing this for years. They created, I didn't know this because I never shopped there, but in my research I found they created I forget what it's called, like Walmart Pay or something, and it's by scan to pay with a QR code. So they have been, it's conditioning and it's programming and it's trending and it's using Hollywood to glamorize everything. And as soon as they start bringing Hollywood into something to glamorize it, you know it's an agenda. And you need to stay away.
Totally. I mean, a couple of years before the Rona regime, they had at the Oscars, they had the flu. They were going around with pretend shots and going and
Right.
you remember that?
Yeah. Yep. God, the stuff we've witnessed in the past 4 years, it's just been ludicrous.
It has been ludicrous. And if people are willing to put this poison that they can't tell you the ingredients of in their bodies, hell yeah, they want to scan a QR because it looks innocent enough. And we end up being in the minority.
Yeah, and they're going to push carbon offsets into it too. And that was another thing in Deloitte's report. So yeah, I think they said like real soon it's going to be $100 billion industry. It's absurd, where they want, you know, stores and various companies to start putting it into where you go to, so you know, when you go to a store to purchase something and it's $1.42 and they'll say, oh, do you want to round up and donate to such and such? Now they're going to say, oh, would you like to add this to buy some carbon credits and help save the planet? And so now we're dealing in monopoly money, and I mean, which it's all monopoly money really, but it's a complete farce. So you're going to have these people owning these carbon credits, and it's just
all bullshit.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know. And so, but look, we've battled against a lot of stuff and boycotted a lot of places and gotten put an end to many things. I have a whole solutions section
yeah,
on my website. And
yes.
then in addition to that, I have the solution series, which was 24 episodes, and those are everything from protecting your land, trusts, assets, farming, ranching, survival, ham radios, like all kinds of cool stuff in there. So if you're looking to learn, and
CoreyDiggs.com.
yes, Corey's with an S,
Corey's
Coreys,
Digs, sorry.
Digs.
I'm showing it right now. You could find these reports on Corey'sDigs.com and solutions. It's important to provide solutions. Do you want to talk about any more solutions for the vaccine IDs or anything else to share on that, or just mindful of your time?
Well, as far as the IDs, the digital identities, I did it's in my book, it's chapter 5, but it's also on my website, so people can download it free. It's 22 ways to stop the vaccine ID passports. And you can take vaccine off it because you got the real ID with the driver's license. They're coming at it from every angle. So it's the digital identity. And the QR code, it'll really be nothing more than a hall pass. At some point, I think they're going to probably move beyond that. And,
Do you,
whether it's full blown biometrics and we're going to have scanners everywhere that just automatically scan you as you're walking, or.
right? I mean, I remember going into the airport in Costa Rica and I to myself, I was like, oh, they didn't take my temperature. And they already took your temperature. I'm like, when? There's a big it was like a solar panel that had taken, yeah, that had taken my temperature without me knowing. And
Wow.
again, people will think all of these, or not all the people, but they will think it's cool. And
Right.
I remember actually, Court, when I was coming back from Costa Rica the first time in 2020, and so it was September 2020, so the airports were empty, and I was standing to go do customs, and I was watching. There wasn't a lot of people, but let's say 60 people, and they're all being scanned. They were being sitting in front, and I noticed like nobody said, "What is that?" So then I went and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we're testing out a new system to make it easier." So, and I said, "What, all the 10 seconds it takes for me to take out my passport? That's what you're trying to save me?" I said, "Opting, I want to opt out." And they said, "Opt out." But point is that no one, you know, the
People
people,
don't question
yeah,
things.
they
They
don't
don't question authority. They don't want to make a scene. They'll be embarrassed.
And now the people who do question authority, they stand out way more because it's past 3.5 years. I mean, I just went to get do a blood test to see my cortisol levels, and it didn't go very well. I ended up calling her a name and getting kicked out, but that's a story. But it was because I didn't want to oblige to something. And in fact, I said, you're vaccinated. And I said, I said something about a vaccine injury. I said, my stepdad's dying. And she said, that's great. She actually,
You're
you know
kidding
what,
me.
another thing is, like, I think people that have taken the vaccine, they talk about VMA2, that's something they're operating below the heart. Like, someone had said that and it resonated, like they're not in their heart chakra anymore. Like,
Interesting.
I don't know if you've
Well,
noticed, like
I
there's
mean,
some brain damage going on in some people.
I think fear is a very powerful tool. I think it's look, they know how to trigger people every which way from Sunday. So they just roll it all out like
Let the
freaking
games begin.
alphabet soup and see what sticks.
Right.
Yeah. So you got to stay really grounded and really balanced, and
Thank you.
I think that's important. really important, and you, because we're very similar, like we work way too much. And then I'll get a break and I'll go, I spent the day outside nature. It was great. And then I'll hear from you and you're slammed and slammed. I'm like, dude, go take a break. You have to do it. It's really important.
It is important. It is important. I'm trying to incorporate more balance, but I think, like, I was having this conversation with another journalist friend, that I don't think people realize, like, it's so time consuming to
Oh
write
yeah, I
this.
know.
It's
I know.
so
Just like
time
that
consuming.
space one took me over 150 hours to put
Wow.
together. And I don't even know how long parts 1 and 2 of the whole laundering one took. That took quite a bit too. And I actually still have a whole bunch of research sitting here. So I have 3 more parts that I'm writing on that eventually.
Yeah. I mean, but I choose to do it. I mean, I want to understand it, and I love it. It's
Right.
just very time consuming. Like, I started to write about anthrax just because someone had said, there's ties between Pakistan and China and Wuhan around the time that the Rona kicked off. And then I was looking in 2019, there was these weird vape illness, and there were two retiree homes that had weird outbreaks. And then you realize the water system in Fort Detrick is dovetailing into the people's water systems. So then I started looking into that, and then I'm like revisiting the anthrax letters, and then I found this scrubbed article from in Wired, and then I looked. It was such a fascinating article. Then I looked at the author, and I'm like, oh, he's the editor-in-chief of Rolling Stone, and he was before that the editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast. Wait a second, is this guy actually a gatekeeper for the FBI? Anyway, so then next thing you know, it's like, oh, it's a month and a half has passed, and I'm in the bowels of anthrax. But and it's like it's not like this report. This is beneficial. People need to know about this stuff. I don't know what I can offer as a solution in regards to anthrax. But it is fascinating. And then I found out George Webb had done a whole bunch of deep dives and written a book about anthrax. And anyway, so that's how it goes. You start something and then.
Well, I think it's important that, look, they're removing history quickly, and we don't even know what's been written about what happened, 100 years ago, how much of it's real, how much of it's fake. Obviously, we've sat there and observed with our own eyes them removing statues, them altering things, them scraping, oh my God, so much stuff off the internet that's no longer available. They're erasing stuff. They're erasing it. So I do think it's important that the work that we and many others do, because it's kind of like, what was it? Well, you think of just Native American culture and the passing down of things. There's not a lot of people to pass this wisdom down, and it's like that in many cultures and many fields, and they're making it to the point where God, what was it? There was a specific industry I was just thinking of that they're doing that to where eventually we're not going to have people that know how to do this or how to teach it. And it's escaping me right now. And so I think it's important, though, that we document, as much as we can so that future generations, print hard copies, for God's sakes. Don't everything needs to be in hard copy and passed along. And
that's what I'm saying. We're scribes. You're a scribe. This is memorializing. It's very important, and it's very frustrating knowing that, like you said, the Ministry of Truth in real time. It's like back in the day, or even in 2020, I was able to go to the archival houses and I was pulling archives, and now even the Wayback Machine has been scrubbed to a certain extent, and so you have to go find the microfiche, the holes, right? Ideally, I don't know what that looks like anymore. I found stuff in newspapers.com, for instance, like
Yeah.
in reference to the mandala effect. Like I found instances of it when it was Haas, avocado, HAAS, before it
Yeah.
became Haas. So I found
Huh.
proof in the newspapers.com. And I used to have access to LexisNexis, which is very expensive.
Oof. Yeah, it is.
I don't know how it is now. I don't have access anymore.
I've never had access to that.
I
It's
used,
and by very expensive, we're talking thousands upon thousands upon thousands. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah. I
I-
don't, yeah, I mean, I'm like you, I do everything raw. The only thing I do have access to, and just like over the last year, was newspapers.com, and that's through Elle, God bless her. But um I everything is just raw open source, you know?
Yeah, and but digging, it's not looking at things on Google.
Right,
Um,
right,
I use Quant, but I also use multiple. Sometimes I go to the Matrix Google to see if it's some inane thing. I just go and see what it'll come up with
right,
that, but use multiple sources. And it's a shame that now you know that it's not all out there. And so if
right,
you're trying to assemble a puzzle piece, but
right.
literally some of the puzzle pieces have been burnt or destroyed,
Yeah.
then it becomes, you have to work even harder. And again, to just give kudos to you. I'm very proud of you,
Oh,
Corey. I'm
thanks.
proud
I'm
to
proud of
know
you
you.
too.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I invite people to go to corysdigs.com. There's no shortage of just resources and solutions. Corey focuses on solutions because that's also very important, so you don't slit your wrists. Um, well, yeah, I mean, it's important to be able to do something about it and empower yourself.
Right.
So is there anything you want to say? Should we wrap it up? I mean, I could talk.
Yeah, we can wrap it up. I also do a weekly Dig It podcast with the Sharp Edge. So YouTube, of course, killed my account. So I'm on Rumble and BitChute and SoundCloud and others.
Are you on Blast? You come up on Blast?
Blast.
Blast.video, Zach's site.
Oh, wait, what is it?
Blast.video. Yeah, we should get
It's
you
whose site is it?
Zach.
Oh, no, I haven't set anything up on there. Yeah. What's up with that, Zach? He should have
What's
me
up
on
with
there.
that? I'll ask him when I speak to him.
Okay.
But yeah, I have to go back to listening to the Friday report, and I'm doing it a little backwards. I'm going to listen to the reports now because I didn't before. Bad, Miriam. Because I like to be prepared. I get really pissed off when I go on interviews and it's like, you didn't watch the movie? Well, what the fuck are we going to talk about then? No?
Right.
So I apologize, Corey.
Oh no, it's okay. It was a mountain of information. So, and you can pick up on what I'm talking about anyway, so it's no biggie.
Yeah, but I also want to know the details and educate myself.
Right.
It's yeah, I love stuff like this. I love details, and it's like just even taking the time to write down all these 63 central banks, monetary authorities, and the Federal Reserve System.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Gangsters. And the
Gangs.
IRS is the global mafia acting just like the mafia, taking a cut, and it's not legal. And people need to look through the layers of information.
We talked about one solution. It is important to keep your vibration up, your frequency up. I also think to get your house in order, meaning to be resourceful, to live like all my plans. Like, I don't know how I ended up in a smart city in South Beach. It's like, this was not, what I had in the works, but hey, put it on my resume. But I definitely don't want to be in a city. And so be resourceful and be off the grid, raise your vibration, anything else. I
I
mean,
would say don't be, okay, when we say be off the grid, I would
yeah,
say don't go so far off the grid that there's only one post office and one grocery store and one medical facility in town because they're gonna shutter that town. So, you know, rural, definitely not in a city. I do believe they're gonna move out to the suburbs. Look, remember the crash when they destroyed all the, with the fires and the burning and the looting and everything, and they're still doing some of that, but during the whole George Floyd stuff, right? I'm sure you reported on that. So major real estate takeover in
yeah,
these cities. Now we have a reason to declare this emergency. We have this migrant issue. We need to utilize all these vacant places to house migrants. And so we need to rezone. We need to take office and retail and we need to rezone it because we need residential. And this is how we build out our smart cities. And now we're getting more of an overflow. So now we're going to start merging out to some of the surrounding suburbs. I believe that's
mm,
how the creep's going
yeah.
to happen.
Well, look what happened to Lahaina.
Oh, yeah. I personally think there is a connection there with space. I know everyone's focused on the
Well,
wipe it out to build a
Smart
smart
city.
city.
But there was a space laser there, right?
Yes, but I do believe that there's something more there to that. There's location wise, it's an important location. I believe there's a key port there also. I think it has more to do with the location and future plans than it does anything to do with a smart city, but
Mm.
that's just my opinion.
Well, it's always multi-layered, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So it probably strategically where it's located internationally, right?
Mhm.
It plays a role, but also, and the people who are not able to go identify their loved ones, are not able to go to their home and get any remains if there's anything remaining. And then they're doing exactly what the system wants them to do is like, I can't stay in Lahaina. I have to go to the mainland to
Right.
start fresh. Oh, great. Well,
And once they get them all out of there, then they can start doing what it is they intend on doing.
exactly.
So anyone who's got a drone, let's get some drones over there and get some footage.
Yeah, I interviewed Craig Pasta Jardula, who has been sitting in for Jimmy Dore, who, because he's on Jimmy Dore, was able to get the support and went to Maui and did a documentary, Lahaina on Fire, and
Mm.
really boots on the ground, like old school.
Who
And
was this now? What was his
it's
name?
Craig Pasta Jardula.
I don't. Did he already do the
He
documentary or
already
was,
did the documentary. He already did
oh, I
one.
haven't seen that yet, I don't think.
I can send it to you.
Okay, cool.
It's a really good touching documentary. A lot of the people that he does, it's just boots on the ground, really,
Yeah.
and showing he went to in Lahaina, like the way that people mobilized. There's such an old school community feeling that is
Yeah.
unfortunately non-existent. It's very unfortunate. I mean, I found that a little bit in more of a community feeling personally when I was in St. Augustine. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's not in this building. I think
Hmm.
community family is very important.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Corey. I know you have somewhere to go. And again, corysdigs.com. Check out Corey Sharp Edge podcast. What is it? Corey's report?
Dig it.
Dig it. Yes, sorry, I apologize. Dig it.
Mhm.
And no shortage of resources. So thank you.
Well,
Lots of
thank you.
thank you. And I want to do this. I want to do this again. I've been wanting to interview you for a long time. Yeah. Again,
Sure.
just to tell people that in 2020, I was in Costa Rica listening to Corey and Sharp Edge and just like, wow, look at this woman. She really cares about details. And then I'm proud to be your friend. So thank you.
Aw, thank you.